Good morning. Welcome to the second part of The War That Saved My Life. We're not going to do, I think, a lot of character discussion this time around. We'll probably get to some thematic elements on the next presentation. Today, I just want to do some jumping around, I think, about novel types and about where we've seen some of this stuff before, even though this is a novel written for younger readers than the rest of the novels we've been talking about. First of all, I want to talk about the term middle grade fiction. And middle grade fiction is usually written for readers between the ages of 8 and 12. That puts the top end of middle grade fiction, 12, at the bottom end of adolescent literature, which is usually 12 to 18. Both cut across genres: historical, detective, science fiction, fantasy. We have dealt with the science fiction, the detective. This is a historical novel, and both of them deal with it. This is a thing about age, not a specific genre. Young adult fiction is not a genre. Middle grade fiction is not a genre. Historical or detective or science fiction, those are the genres. They may focus on the protagonist's immediate world of friends and family. If you take a look at The War That's Saved My Life, it's about Ada, and it's about Jamie, and it's about Susan. It's about her making friends with Stephen, or is it Maggie? I just lost the other girl's name. Okay. Whereas if you're dealing with um, Paper Towns, it's dealing with mirrors and windows and these metaphors, and it's trying to help Q understand that Margot should not be an obsession for him. Whether he truly ever understands, that's open to question. The same with Todd. I'm trying to become a man. I'm trying to be a man within less than a month, and now I'm fighting in this great war that I had no idea was coming. Okay. Katniss is fighting for her life, trying to make sure that her mother has enough food on the table, things like that. It's not about the world of friends and family, it's about the world of Panem in the Hunger Games. I think that uh, Ada does focus and have some self reflection. We've dealt with some of those quotes last lecture. I think we'll probably pick some of that up again. The other thing is, and I probably should have moved this up, the characters are usually between the ages of 10 and 13. It's kind of widely reported that generally younger readers want to read about people older than they are, but not so much older that they can't make sense of it. So an 8-year-old would want to read about a 10-year-old. A 11-year-old would want to read about a 13-year-old. The 12-year-old might want to read about a 14 to 16-year-old. And I adapted some of this, as you can see, but I think it's a pretty good overview. I also adapted some stuff from a publisher's weekly article that I think makes sense. First of all, if you take a look at the slide while I ramble, you'll notice that middle grade is just an age range. And this editor from Chronicle Books says that it doesn't even have to be about a middle grade kid or a kid at all. They can be about an old man or be in the voice of a dog. And I think that that sort of thing is important as we take a look here. This is the voice of Ada, even though it might not usually be about the narrator. This one is certainly in Ada's voice. And I think that Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, I almost said Clark, Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, does a pretty good job of establishing Ada's voice and having Ada be a believable character for someone who was spent 10 or 11 years of her life locked up in her mother's flat. Okay. I think this fact is important. If this is one of the first big books that a kid reads, that an 8 or 10-year-old reads, um, they get exposed to how a story can be told. And Ada certainly tells a great story. She tells the story of World War II. She gives them some historical references. She gives them some personal experiences. She tells a great story. And so I don't know if I have this in the slides, but this is kind of between the chapter book stage and the true young adult fiction stage. And I think that this book does a good job of just telling a great story. One of the first slides shows that I forced you guys to watch talked about I don't care what it's about, a good story is a good story. I think this one gives us a good story. I do think that sometimes things go overboard. I do think that some of the discussions we have about is this middle grade, is this young adult, is this not young adult at all. For example, last time I taught this class, I taught a book called Trail of Lightning, which was an urban fantasy because I wanted to have kind of a female superhero to bounce off of the Black Panther. It could easily be argued that that book was not young adult for lots of reasons. This book, I think, is the same sort of way. It might well be totally and completely in the middle grade camp. I still think it fits into adolescent literature, however. And this Norman, the publisher, talks about Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, blur the boundaries between middle grade and YA. I think The War That Saved My Life does that. And I think it's important to understand that it just doesn't matter. The first line here, the confusion is a case of inside baseball. It doesn't matter. What matters is who's the intended audience, all right? And does this book deliver a good story, a good plot, and are there other things besides the plot and besides the action that make this historical uh, fiction worth reading? And I think all of this gets tied into yes, it is worth reading. One more thing from the uh, publishing houses. Ages matter. So do things like having profanity, having sexual situations beyond a kiss, or being invited for tea in this case. But it's about perspective. This book focuses on who Ada is, but Ada does some self reflection, which is why I think it blurs the lines, as I said in the previous slide. But she's certainly not doing the self reflection that Q did. She's certainly not doing the self reflection that Katniss does. She's not that deep into the, you know, who am I sort of thing. The best she can do is repeat a line that Susan gave her about my brain is a long way from my foot. Okay. And so I think let's not make it complicated. This is a book for 8 to 12-year-olds. However, I think it fits into adolescent literature, and I think it was well worth the read to get A, historical fiction, and B, to kind of see books that are meant for the lower end of that adolescent spectrum, the 12 and 13-year-olds, how those books work as well. Here's the citation from Publishers Weekly. If you want to pause and I think if you Google the title or you should be able to find it. It's well worth the read. I want to provide a little context and some perspective here. This is a lot like Paper Towns in the fact that both are set in a wealthy area. All right, Lady Thornton and Susan are not poor people. Ada and Jamie experience the effects of war. Those effects are real. I mean, Ada screaming as she goes into that makeshift fallout shelter was a real experience. Bay's experiences also, I think, are real experiences. All right, I know we had the conversation about whether the novel actually happened or it didn't happen. I think authentic. Let's switch from real to authentic. They're authentic experiences both. Ada develops her sense of worth when she tells the officer her foot is a long way from her brain. She's helps catch the spy. It's a big deal, okay? Stanley develops into this person who can break the curse, and the Holds narrator hints the reader should be concerned about the development of Stanley's character. Both of those things are, I think, an important element of we're focusing on the character here and how the character develops. How Ada goes from a girl who was hidden away in a closet, almost Harry Potter-esque in her mom's flat, to a character who can catch a spy. Pretty darn good. Stanley goes from a kid who was fat and bullied to a kid who can carry Zero up the mountain, who can find the thumb of God, who can survive being, overnight in the pit full of those yellow spotted lizards. This is about the character of both protagonists. And again, though these two books are closer in age, so it kind of makes sense. But I do think they kind of go beyond friends and family and make us think about other things. For example, poverty. Todd. I don't know if there's a lot of difference in some ways between Todd and Ada. Todd's isolated, he's uneducated, his language is rough, he can't think beyond himself very often. Viola needs to keep him on, kind of the straight and narrow, as it were. He keeps learning new things about himself and about Prentisstown. Ada keeps learning new things about herself as she finds the birth certificate, as she finds an article about her father, as she finds other things. Both of them are discovering themselves. It's just the vocabulary of the books, the reading level, and then the layers with the noise and the metaphor of the knife and all of those other things. I think it's easy to argue, and I copied and pasted and I forgot to change it. That Katniss, the second one should be Katniss, that poverty and a sense of responsibility shape Ada. She is going to take care of Jamie. Poverty and a sense of responsibility shape Katniss. Katniss is going to be taking care of Prim. She's going to be taking care of her mother. She's going to be the responsible one. There are some implications to all of this. Because it's for younger readers, because it's for 8 to 12-year-olds, I think we should forgive the sentimentality. For example, when the pilots come to Christmas dinner and they're playing with Jamie, and we have this touching scene, Jamie, and we have this touching scene, and then later we find out that they were killed, and Jamie cries. That's really heavy-handed sentimentality. We can forgive it. It's for 8-year-olds. When the soldier asks Ada to write a letter and then dies almost immediately, we should forgive that sort of sentimentality. It's for 8-year-olds. We shouldn't care too much that Mam is woefully underdeveloped. She's a character who is cruel. She's a character who is nasty. That's all we need to know. We can contrast her with Susan, and because we can contrast her with Susan, who has her own set of problems that I think I'll try to get to in the next presentation on Monday, okay? And we should forgive the stereotypical Colonel McPherson and Lady Thornton. They're stereotypical, retired British military, rich upper class woman who's got all of these social responsibilities because of the sense of noblesse oblige. And we should just forgive all those. It tells the story well. It goes beyond, the simple little chapter book sorts of things. It gets us to character developments. It gets us to care about who Ada is. We get to see her grow. We get to see her change. We deal with the implications of poverty. We deal with the implications of class divisions. We deal with the implications of malnourishment. We deal with the implications of abuse. There's a lot of stuff here. And so I think we can forgive a lot. Also, I think we can forgive some of the things we've talked about in class. I've talked about tropes before in class. I've talked about the idea that tropes are a lot of times a shorthand, and they often lead to stereotypical stuff. And certainly the Ada sees the horse and she immediately becomes this girl who loves the horse, and the all girls love horses trope is something that's been overdone and overused um, and probably doesn't really belong in a book published, in 2018 or whatever it is. And the Dos Ex Machina. They get to the fallout shelter in time. Susan comes to rescue them in time. Yes, Ada had to be the one to call Mam's bluff. Ada had to be the one to get them on the road. But that was still a Dos Ex Machina. And I think we can forgive that. And so I hope you forgive me for the typos. I hope that you're enjoying this novel for what it is, and that we can take a look at the fact that it fits, despite what the publishers may want to do. I think it fits squarely in the young adult, the adolescent lit genre. It's just that the target age is, 11 or 12, not 17 or 18. I hope you all have a good weekend. I believe I'm posting this one on Friday, and we'll see you in class on Monday. Remember, there's going to be a quiz.